Hi, I'm Liz Wood at the Quilted Cowgirl, and I apologize tonight for blowing up your feed, but I'm trying to get some videos done to get uploaded to my YouTube channel. So tonight I'm going to share a little block, how to make a mix and match block with you. This was a block that I found on Jordan videos and or Jordan Fabrics videos. I really like this block, and it's great using batik fabrics, so that's what I'm using tonight. So we're going to walk through real quickly how to make this amazing little fun, colorful little block. So this is what the block is going to look like. It is called the Mix and Match block, and I have used various batik fabrics. So I took a charm pack of 5-inch squares, and I mixed them all up, and I paired them all back up with a light and a dark fabric. So all of these are paired up lights and darks, as you can tell. So I just mixed up the whole charm pack and paired them up in pairs. So tonight, to make this little block, we need 4 squares, so we need 2 pairs of lights and darks. So I have chosen a pink and a purple, so light and dark, and then a lime green and a dark navy blue as my light and dark. Okay, so we're going to lay those on top of each other just like that. We're going to bring them over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down each outside edge of these 5-inch square blocks. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I also use leaders and ender scrap fabric to save thread and starting and stopping my blocks so I can chain sew. So we're 1/4 inch. So lining that up there with my 1/4 inch. Bring the other one over. Do the same thing. End with my ender fabric. Snip those threads. Turn them around. So now we have it over here on this side. So now we're going to stitch down this side. So we're basically kind of like closing the block. We have it stitched over here, so now we're going to stitch over here. Okay, so bring these 2 pieces back to your cutting mat. I'm not going to use a lined ruler tonight to demonstrate this. I'm going to use the measurements on my mat because it's too hard for you to see the measurements on a lined ruler and on the fabric. So I'm going to lay this little 5-inch square sewn together with the stitched lines on the outside edges, just like this. I'm going to lay this on my cutting mat. And I'm trying to kind of line it up in a 5-inch square perimeter here. So, as you can tell, I'm overhanging just a little on the outside edges, and that's okay. And we're going to trim off in just a little bit. So, I'm going to put that straight edge right there, kind of pretty much on my line on my mat right there. So. Okay, so I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to cut these in half. So this is a 5-inch square, so I'm going to cut it 2.5 inches. So my 1/2 inch mark is going to be roughly right through here. I'm going to be lining up on this line over here, and I'm going to use the outside edge on these lines over here so I know I'm accurate. So I've got my ruler lined up over here, so then I know that it's perfectly lined up over here. So I'm going to engage that ruler and cut those 2 pieces. Going to do the same thing with the pink. Going to line them up in a 5-inch. I'm going to put that straight edge on that line going horizontal there. And I'm going to cut them in half. Okay, while I have this one on here, I'm going to leave them just like that, and I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off the top of these two pieces. So I've got them laid like that, so I'm going to cut roughly just a little 1/2 inch off the top there. So I'll lay my ruler on this line right here, so I know I'm going to be perfectly and 1/2 inch across the top. If you were using a lined ruler to do this, you just make and take and cut a 1/2 inch measuring down. So zip that off. So we have those two pieces. I'm going to put these two pieces back just for a quick second so I can take a 1/2 inch off the top of them. So I've got them all lined back up. I'm going to line up my ruler here on my mat and take off a 1/2 inch. So now we have these pieces. We're going to take them to the iron. We're going to take and open them up to where we have the light fabric down on the pressing side, and we're just going to kind of peel them back just like that. Give them a press. Peel it back and give it a press. So there's those two. Same thing with these. Light fabric down on the pressing surface, peel the dark back, press, light down, peel back, and press. Okay? And these are batiks, and so they pressed real nice and flat for us. So bring them back to the cutting mat. Just like this. So now we're going to take this one and flip the dark onto the light and the light onto the dark. So we got dark to light. So go and flip it over just on top of each other just like that. And the great thing about that is that the seams will interlock when you do that. This seam on the back is going this direction and the seam on here is going this direction. So they're interlocking. So we got those seams interlocked. We're going to lay them on the mat just like that. Same thing with this. Bring it over, interlock those seams together. They kind of just nest up, and you can kind of feel it with your fingers. You can just nest them with your fingers. Okay, so now we're going to take these pieces and we are going to cut them diagonally. And we are going to cut them diagonally opposite directions. So on this block over here, we're going to cut it going like this. And on this block over here, we're going to cut it going like this. So we're going to make cuts that basically go like this. They make a V. So this one goes this way, and this one goes this way. So we're going to take our ruler. We're going to lay it right there from tip to point on the tips of the fabric here to the tip of the fabric there. And we're going to slice this way. And then on this one, we're going to go this direction. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to take, and we've kind of separated them a little bit, just like this. We're going to take this piece off the top of this one, and we're going to swap them, just like that. We're going to rotate them. So take this piece off, put it here, and take this piece, put it there, just like that. So now we've rotated them. So now we're going to pick up these blocks and we're going to go back to the sewing machine. And now these seams are going to stack up on top of each other. So they're both going the same direction, just like that. So you just match up those little seams right there. I prefer to stitch mine going with the seams going down, so I'm going to flip them over like this so that when I feed them through my machine, the foot is going to go over that, because if you flip them the other way like this, your foot's going to catch that and peel it back like that. So I flip it over so that these are laying toward me, and I'm making sure that they're still stacked. If you're kind of nervous about that, just pop you a little pin right there to hold them in place. And now we're going to stitch along the diagonal side of the pieces here. They're not exactly 100% right on top of each other on the edges up here. We're not worried about that. We're worried about them lining up this way. So I'm going to put them on my 1/4 inch seam allowance line on my machine and start feeding them through. Just like that. Grab the next one. Line up those seam sandwiches on top of each other. Just like that. Place them under the foot. Start feeding them through. There's 2. Here's the 3rd one. And here's the 4th one. We'll flip it over so that those seams are coming toward me. Zip it through. Okay, now we're going to just snip this little chain sewn strip apart. Okay, now we're going to go to the ironing board, and we're going to lay the pieces out just like this in this order with this little small triangle here facing up toward us on the left hand side. So I'm going to make all of these with the small triangle toward us just like that. So now we're just going to we're going to open that up and just peel it back. Give it a press. There's one. Same thing with this one. Open it up, peel it back, press. There's 2. Peel this one back. Press. Peel that one back and press. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the cutting table. Yeah, I like to keep a pair of scissors handy because I like to clip off these little points that stick out there from our seams on the back. So we're just going to take a pair of scissors and we're just going to snip those points off just like that because they just add bulk to the seams. So each one has 2, so just snip them off just like that. Don't get into your edges of your block. Okay, so now we've cut off all those little wing points. Okay, so now we have all of these little blocks, and so I'm going to square these little blocks up before I start putting them together into a finished block. So I'm going to lay them here on my mat, and I'm going to square them up to 4 inches. So I like to put this little square down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and I just kind of like to position it on the mat so that I can go and square it up on all sides. So I've got it laying there so where I can square it up to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see I'm just going to trim off just a little bit all the way around that block. So we'll start over here. Engage my ruler, trim. Trim off the top. I'm gonna, for the sake of the camera, I'm gonna try to do it like this from this side. Trim that off. And then, so I don't have to move it, I'm going to do it like this. But you could pick the block up and turn it and trim off the other two sides. You could do this side and this side, pick the block up and rotate it and do the other two sides. But for the sake of the video, I just trimmed that little block up. We just trimmed off little slivers of that block. So we're going to do all four real quick. So same thing. Oops, it slipped. That's what happens when you get in a hurry. So I'm just making sure I have ample overhang around all the lines. So I have trim up. Oop, I'm getting in the way of the camera here. That's probably going to make some people cringe, the way I just trimmed that on all four sides, because I didn't rotate the block for the camera purposes. But I'll try to do this one. So okay, I'll peel off those two. I'll rotate the block 180 degrees, line it up on this line over here and across the bottom, because those are the sides I've already trimmed. There, maybe that won't make you cringe as bad as me cross-body cutting. So, and you may be wondering about this ruler. This is a slide lock ruler. When I mash down on this wooden thing, it engages these little knobs on the back that mash my fabric to keep it from slipping. So when I say I'm engaging the ruler, that's what I mean by that. So unfortunately, that company went out of business earlier at the beginning of the year. A little elderly couple that made those retired, so I can't get them anymore. Okay, so now all four blocks are trimmed, and they're all trimmed down to 4 inches a piece. So now we're going to take these blocks and we're just going to start laying them out, and we're going to match them up to where they're opposites of each other. The twins are opposite, just like that. So we have this block that matches that one diagonally, so these two are opposing, these two are opposing, same thing out on the outer ends, same thing here. So that's the mix and match block. So now to sew these together, we're going to flip them over on top of each other just like that, and now you can see that that seam is a little folded there. Gotta pull it back and interlock those seams. So the bottom one, the seam is going that way. The top one, the seam is going this way. So we're going to interlock those seams and sew those two together just like that. And the same thing, we're going to flip these over on the top of each other, and they have the interlocking seams right there. So I'm going to stick a pin in them and sew them real quick, just to hold that interlocking seam in place. I'm going to stick a pin right there where they interlock. And my pin is dull. There it goes. And I just bent it. So I'm going to feed that through my machine. 1/4 inch seam allowance, just like that. Same thing right here. I'm going to stick that pin, interlock that seam. Quarter inch seam. Just like that. Okay. So now we have the 2 halves put together. So we're going to open this up. We're going to basically press this one going this direction. So I'm just going to mash down there and kind of finger press that. Use my little rolling press to kind of flatten it down. So now you can see all of our intersections are meeting good. And now we're going to take this one, flip it around, and now we're going to make it go this way so that these 2 seams, when we put them on top of each other, interlock. So this seam was pressed going that way. This seam is pressed going this way, just like that. So now we take these and flip them on top of each other, and we have interlocking seams right there. The bottom one's going this direction and this top one is going that direction. So I'm going to grab a sharp pin, pin that little intersection right there, just like that. The rest of it all looks really good. Zip it through my machine, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Open it up. Voila, there's our block. So stick it over here. I'm going to fold it back together and I'm going to set that seam. Sorry. Now we're going to open it up. Press it to one side. So we're going to go that way with it and re-steam. I'll flip it over, show you the back side of my block where all my seams are all laying flat and going in the directions they need to be. They're not twisted, they're not turned, and the back looks as neat as the front. I'll give all those seams a little press, a little steam. Bring it back to the cutting mat. I like to use a block lock ruler to square up with. I like the measurements on this little ruler. So this block needs to square up to 7.5. So I'm going to square up one side and across the top, and then I'm going to turn it and square up the other side. So we're literally going to be cutting off just little slivers or threads, if anything. So there's not really a whole lot. Rotating it, lining it up on my 7.5, going this way, then across this way, and intersecting right here in this corner. Again, basically cutting off threads and just a little sliver of a piece up there. So there is the mix and match block. And we're off just a slight little bit right here, so I would probably take a little seam ripper and unstitch that and realign those and just stitch those couple of little stitches right there, because I'm anal like that and I would want those to not be off like that. Ideally, you want them like my block that I didn't video, to where everything comes out perfect. So Yes, even I'm off a little bit in this video, but I will probably go and fix that little spot there and that little spot there and get them to realign. But ultimately, this is what your block should look like. All your points should match up and be perfectly on point. That's it for making the mix and match block. Thank you for watching, and I'll upload this video onto my YouTube channel so that if you want to go back later and follow along and do your own at home, you can watch along on my YouTube channel and create your own block. Thank y'all. Have a great evening.
Gotta have a cute dog.